if you want to understand the course of the genocide, the shape of the genocide against the Palestinian people of the last 15 months plus, there's a tweet by Susan Abulhawa that I think is very illuminating. Now, Susan has been most recently in the news because of her contribution to an Oxford Union debate. It's well worth looking at this particular pinned tweet by her, where you have a long video of her contribution, which was controversial and edited by the Oxford Union, or censored by the Oxford Union in their publication, but you can see it in full here. And these are some books by Abulhawa right here. So she's an author and an activist. So this is the tweet, which I think is very helpful in trying to understand how Israel uses a combined strategy of both propaganda and also military action, and how they work in tandem together. And this is important also for people who are all around the world who are trying to stop the genocide, trying to work toward the liberation of the Palestinian people, that this campaign is a worldwide campaign. It's not just the military campaign in Gaza. So, in a nutshell, I don't think you could understand how Israel has done its bombing campaigns and its attacks on hospitals without understanding it as a probing effort to see how much they can get away with. According to international opinion, they are very dependent on, especially the United States, and also other Western powers, in terms of military supplies, but also propaganda and diplomatic cover. So you can't really understand how the bombings start, of specifically with regard to hospitals, and we continue to see hospital bombings. Kamal Adwan most recently, but starting in the beginning at Ali Hospital, how each of these efforts were a probe, an effort to use a combination of international propaganda and selective media spin, and also a waiting to see what the reaction would be from the U.S. government, from the international press, and also by the publics around the world, and obviously most importantly in the United States, because the U.S. is the primary sponsor of the genocide. So I think this is both an example of what might be called cartoonishly evil behavior by Israel, but also not to get carried away with our moral condemnation of it, which is justified, but also to use our reason and understanding to understand what is happening and what they are doing. So just reading this tweet saying, I'm afraid of what is meant to follow the assassination of Khaled Napan. Hear me out. Israel's modus operandi is to push the boundary to see what it can get away with. For example, frustrated by international activists in Palestine, they decided to kill one or two to see what they could get away with. Rachel Corrie, Tom Herndal, etc. were thus killed in cold blood. However, there were lawsuits and various reverberations that were costly to them. In other words, there was sufficient outrage and resistance to make them rethink that strategy. Their desire to bomb hospitals in Gaza proceeded this way. Recall the first hospital they hit. They tested the waters by targeting the courtyard of Al-Ali Hospital first. There was initial outrage tamped by muddling of their narrative. This paved the way for the much larger target, Al-Shifa Hospital, the largest. So, etc. about each hospital. This is how they made their way into Rafah, the supposed red line, and turned every so-called safe zone into an actual death camp. This is how they've been assassinating journalists. This is what happened with the assassination of the World Central Kitchen workers. Remember the first time? The second time they did it did not elicit any meaningful headlines or coverage at all. There are a few personalities that have emerged from Gaza who become much beloved and iconic symbols of love, light, and endurance and unity. Caleb Nahat was one of them, and they just killed him. Make no mistake that this was an intentional assassination to test our reactions, to see if they could get away with killing the next internationally known Palestinian with millions of followers. We all know who they are, those amazing people whose light on this earth shines too bright for the darkness of the Israeli soul. So this tweet is from the 16th of December 2024, and I highly recommend that you read it and also reflect on the events as they've occurred over the last period of time, and also what our role as the international community is in supporting and continuing on the genocide, and what we can do to stop that support, what we can do to withdraw it, what we can do to frustrate these efforts to manufacture consent for these atrocities, this genocide.